Okay, so I have a lot to share with you guys. I hope you're energized enough to get through this. First of all, you got to find yourself on this chart. This is the history of humans on planet Earth. So not very many of us, till 160,000 years ago, you get the first Homo sapiens, but then it's just thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. Not until the last 200 years did we hit that hockey stick growth curve. Oh, which you can't see, so it's off the screen. And go from millions to billions almost overnight, right? And it's this curve, the one you can't see. It goes like this, all the way up. But this curve that defines everything we're experiencing in the world today, right? By definition, what worked in the past is not going to work going forward. And it's our job to figure out, how are we going to invent on that scale new solutions to the new problems that humans are facing? What happened? Well, all along the way, we came across hard technical problems. How do you feed this many people? How do you give them jobs, give them homes, eradicate the disease that's killing them off? Do you know 400 million people died of smallpox before we invented vaccination? These are the reasons you and I exist today, is that every time, it wasn't government policy, it wasn't religion, it wasn't charity or some election. Every time humans invented a new technology, brought it into the world to solve those technical problems that kept humans from thriving. So, if there's one thing all these extra humans are good for, it's making more problems. So, our job is to figure out, how are we going to invent on that scale? How are we going to solve the problems that keep us from thriving? So this is an old buddy of mine named Sammy. Sammy's kind of a famous computer hacker. Sammy got into a little trouble for writing a computer virus that he was using to meet girls on the internet, which you're not really supposed to do. He wasn't allowed to use computers for a few years. But Sammy's back now. He's been playing with Google Maps. You guys use Google Maps. You know how Google knows how to color the roads for traffic? Your phones are all just telling Google that you're stuck in traffic. But Sammy's phone lies to Google. And all the roads he's about to drive on clear out. That'd be a pretty good app to have, right? Guys like Sammy are a little bit deranged. You know, their brains are a little bit different than most of your friends. But they're good for something. They're good for figuring out what's possible. If you get a new gadget and show it to your mom, she might ask you, well, what does this do? And you can explain, it's a phone, Mom. iPhone, says on the box. But if you get a new gadget and you give it to Sammy, the question is different. The question is, what can I make this do? And he's going to flip it over, break it apart into a lot of little pieces by taking out the screws, but then figure out what can be built from that rubble. And it's that discovery process that's fundamental to invention. It's fundamental to innovation. And without it, you never get anything new. Nobody's ever invented a new technology by reading the directions, right? And the hackers are the ones who are violating the warranty before they got the shrink wrap off, right? We need them. I'm not saying you want to hire them. But one way or another, we need to have a relationship with the people who generate those new ideas. This is a protocol diagram for the encryption system in your phone that encrypts your passwords and credit card numbers when you send them to Amazon. This is a super boring slide, but you guys can ignore it. But what a hacker will do is attack every point in this protocol. What happens if I send a date from the future? What happens if I send 2 responses to the server when I'm only supposed to send 1? What happens if I send a 0 when I'm supposed to send a 1? It might break. And if I can get it to break, then maybe I can get it to do something it's not supposed to do, like give me your password or something new. This is Anopheles stephensi. She's a female mosquito carrying malaria in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the most dangerous animal on earth. Not sharks, not snakes, not spiders. Actually, the person sitting next to you is a close second. Watch out for them. Mosquitoes are mysterious. We don't actually even understand how they can fly. Their wings are so small. It's not Bernoulli effect. They're like swimming in air or something. We don't understand that much about them, but I have a badass video camera, so I thought I'd show you what that looks like. This is a protocol diagram for malaria. It spends some of its life in a human, some of its life in a mosquito. It's super complicated. We don't understand that much about it. So what we do in the lab where I work is we hire hackers to attack every point in this protocol. We can and will eradicate malaria once and for all in our lifetime. And we'll save 1 million lives a year doing it, half of them kids under 5 years old. But we can't do it by reading the directions. There are none. This is the old-fashioned way of going after malaria. You spray chemicals that kill everything, and then you hope the good stuff comes back. And you teach your kids to sing, DDT is good for me. It's not really good for you. But this is how we got rid of malaria in the Southwest, in the US, and in Southern Europe. But that's an old technology, spraying chemicals. And it's not enough to solve the problem that we have it at the scale that we have it in Southeast Asia and in Africa. So we have to invent new tools for the arsenal. When you're an inventor, you always try to invent a solution involving lasers, because lasers are cool. And it would be fun if you could find mosquitoes and shoot them down with laser beams, which we sort of laughed about. I hired a hacker. 6 weeks later, using machine vision, just motion detection algorithms, really, we're finding anything that's moving on a video camera. We aim a laser at the moving thing. We use the signal from that laser to sample the wing beat frequency. And if it's a good enough signal that we can sort out bugs and figure out which ones are the mosquitoes, but we can also figure out the species and the gender. And if it's a female, Anopheles stephensi, well then we shoot it down with a lethal laser. And here's what that looks like. She's not coming back. Here we vaporized her wing off. It's okay, you guys, you can laugh. You can kill as many mosquitoes as you want. Not even PETA comes to save them. Here we overdid it a little bit, vaporized an entire bug. But it's very satisfying work if you can get it. Whoops, that's subliminal marketing. Okay, so this is basically my childhood in one slide. I grew up in the cold, in the dark, in the basement, in Alaska, with that computer, which is kind of like the first home computer. And as much as I loved it, it's kind of a piece of shit. Like, the spreadsheet hadn't been invented yet. Like, this thing was not useful. All you could really do is crash it and reboot it. But I learned a lot. I learned what all those little ones and zeros were doing, and I was so excited. It lit up my imagination because I could imagine someday I'll have a faster computer. And someday I'll have more memory. And someday it'll be useful. And I tried to convince everyone of this. I literally would like invite girls over to my basement to show them my computer to impress them. Yeah, that's not how it worked. That's why I learned to salsa. Okay, so you know how we measure computers by like the speed, like how many math problems per second they can do, right? So this is a 1 kiloflop computer, which is about as fast as my like 6th grade daughter at doing math problems. But I was fantasizing about getting my hands on a Cray XMP, giant supercomputer, 400 megaflops. This is 1982. Imagine what I could do with all that computational ability, right? Well, now you're all hauling around 115 gigaflops in your pocket. I'm happy to see you. We're no longer imagination constrained, or computationally constrained. We're imagination constrained, right? My whole life I wanted a faster computer. I don't anymore. I got a fast enough computer. You guys all have fast enough computers, right? We're imagination constrained. We're at the beginning of figuring out what our computers are good for. Here's another totally fake slide that I made up. You can just ignore this, but you've all spent plenty of time in Excel making a spreadsheet to spit out charts and graphs like this to convince somebody of something. This is what I call small data. You can just take Excel, drag it into the trash, empty the trash, tell your boss I said so. This is not what computers are for. Nothing interesting will ever be done this way again. This is my new computer. It's 5,000 core badass with a lot of blinking blue lights, and there's no reason at all you need one of these. I just have it because it's cool. You can rent them by the minute from Amazon, right? Everybody can get access to an absurd amount of computational ability, right? That's why we're here. The only thing that's really changed in the last 5 or 10 years is that computers got fast enough and cheap enough that we could all afford to waste computation trying things to see what happens, right? And this is so powerful. I sincerely believe if we never invent anything new for the rest of our lives, if we never invent anything better than deep learning, there's enough work to do to keep us busy till we're dead, just applying the tools we have now to the problems that exist in the world, right? Using this surplus of computation. Here's an example from our lab. We're doing computational models on the spread of disease, right? So this is a model for the spread of malaria in Africa. So we collect data, climate, rainfall, travel of humans, all the kinds of things that can affect the spread of malaria. And that goes into this giant Monte Carlo simulation, right? And what we can do is project years into the future what's going to happen with the spread of the disease. So this is just Madagascar. If you go to Madagascar, you should probably go to the middle. That's actually where the people still are. In the rainy season, malaria covers almost the entire island, but you can see in the dry season, it goes away almost completely. Because we have this model, we can test our interventions thousands of times in software before we ever do it in the real world, right? What happens if I spray DDT here, or deploy some bed nets there, or set up a laser and shoot some mosquitoes? We can see what's going to happen, and we can plot optimized eradication campaigns. This is not science fiction. We've been doing this for over a decade. We advise 75 different countries on how to optimally deploy their vaccination resources. This is how we're going to eradicate polio once and for all. Again, any day now, right? These are superpowers for humans. These things were unthinkable for our entire lives until just the last 5 or 10 years. And we got to the point where we can waste computation. Anybody here ever use Photoshop? You remember this screen? Progress. Probably should have been called like, go have some coffee. No one's seen that screen in years, right? I think you guys are a pretty sophisticated audience from the folks I've been talking to. But I just want to make it clear, when we use all this technical sounding jargon, big data, computational models, neural networks, deep learning, all this stuff is just to make us sound really smart. The truth is, it's pretty simple, right? A computational model is an easy thing for you to understand. A spreadsheet is a computational model. It's a data structure. A photo in Photoshop or Instagram or Snapchat, well, that's just a data structure, right? The data is what color is every pixel, right? And then, like in my epidemiological model, the data is like, how much did it rain on this pixel of Africa? I don't care what color it is. Same thing, though. Just a data structure. And then here in Photoshop, I'm applying a filter, which might have taken all day, but you can do them in real time in Snapchat. You can turn yourself into a moose or a bunny rabbit. That's just wasting computational resources because we don't know what else to do with it, right? But the filter here is just an algorithm. An algorithm is just a formula from your spreadsheet, right? Same thing. But the difference is the algorithm that we generate is huge. Instead of one that fits in a cell where you can kind of look at it and say, okay, well, if I change this value, then the bottom line changes. And you can kind of understand that. No, it's too much data, more data than any human could ever absorb. And the algorithm generated by neural nets, which is like a fancy way of saying randomly generated algorithms that are miles long that nobody could ever read, those algorithms get us good answers, but they're difficult for humans to understand. So instead of trying to understand them, we just test them and test the answers and see which one gets the best answers, right? But that's all that's going on. In a self-driving car, we've got cameras and sensors getting 1,000 frames a second, a massive amount of data, and we're just doing this. Same thing. We're just analyzing that data in real time to figure out whether to turn left or right, make better decisions. That's all. Right? Don't be intimidated by this stuff. You guys can understand it. We act like artificial intelligence is coming and robots are going to turn us into pets. All we have is machine learning. We've had that for decades. We've got a few new tricks to make it a little more efficient. But the main thing is we've got giant supercomputers. They're incredibly fast and incredibly cheap. That's the main driver, right? And all we got to do now is figure out how do we go take real problems and reimagine solutions using this toolkit. This is where I work at the Intellectual Ventures Lab. So we basically just bought one of every tool in the world, hired one of every kind of scientist, put them all on the same team, and then started trying to invent for the biggest problems that we could find. And that's a pretty weird business. With invention, you're mostly wrong all the time because I'm inventing on like a 10-year horizon. So I have to figure out what's going to be technically possible in 10 years and guess what the market's going to want and what the competition's going to be and what's going to be relevant. I don't know. I'm probably just wrong. So the way we work is at a very large scale. If you're an inventor in your garage with crazy hair and a DeLorean, you're probably going to get like a few inventions a year and you're going to go out of business. We come up with about 500 inventions a year, and we hoped for that like one is a big hit every couple years. I'm literally aiming for a batting average of 1, which sounds crazy in every business in the world. But when you're talking about something so uncertain as the future, you don't know what's going to work, so you have to try a lot of things, right? So at our scale, it works. I get hits every once in a while. Here's some. This stuff's interesting. So the idea here is you aerosolize sulfur dioxide into little particles on a hose, and the hose is being held up by this triangular helium balloon, but it's being held up in the stratosphere. And the idea is you put those little particles out into the stratosphere to reflect a little bit of sunlight, like 1% of sunlight, before it gets into Earth's atmosphere. Because what happens is normally sunlight hits the ground or the ocean, and then it re-irradiates in the infrared spectrum, and that heats up your greenhouse gases, and that's what causes global warming. But in this concept, we'd be reflecting a little bit of sunlight to keep the Earth a little cooler, which sounds crazy. It's geoengineering. It's screwing with nature and messing with the atmosphere. But if you've ever watered a lawn, that's also geoengineering. And this mimics a perfectly natural phenomenon, which is that every once in a while a volcano will erupt and shoot a bunch of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. This happened most recently in 1992 in the Philippines. Mount Pinatubo erupted, and it put enough sulfur dioxide up there that it brought Earth's temperature down by a couple of degrees for a couple of years. Now, this is not Plan A. Plan A is like stop emitting carbon into the atmosphere. Plan B is probably also stop emitting carbon in the atmosphere, but those aren't going very well, and we might need a backup plan to buy us a little more time to get off of carbon-emitting fuels, right? But look at this. Oh, you can kill the audio. On the left, you have what happens to Arctic ice caps. Pink is what's actually happening. Blue is what's actually happening. Red is, or pink is what should be happening. But with one of those hoses, it's basically a garden hose into the sky, we can restore Arctic ice conditions to pre-industrial levels, right? Buying us maybe 50 or 60 years to get off of carbon-emitting fuels. Here's an example of a fuel that does not emit carbon. This stuff's kind of interesting. If you had a soup can full of depleted uranium, that's equivalent to $12 million of gas at the pump. That's how much energy is in there. But it's radioactive and dangerous and messy, and we don't know what to do with the waste, so we've been stockpiling it into the horizon, saving it for our grandkids. Hopefully they'll figure out how to make Legos out of it or something. So we invented a new type of nuclear reactor that's powered by nuclear waste. Now, most people don't realize, but like today's reactors were all invented before we were born, with pencils and slide rules. And then they became politically unpopular, and we stopped trying. So nobody's invented any advanced reactor technology in our entire lives. The other thing people don't realize is today's reactors are only 0.7% efficient. 99.3% of the energy is still in the nuclear waste. So our reactors can get the rest of that energy out too. We designed them on that giant supercomputer I showed you. We can model almost every neutron in the reactor core. We can know what's going to happen before we build these things. We can design modern, safe reactors that are more efficient. This is a stockpile here in the US in Kentucky. 700,000 metric tons of depleted uranium just sitting on the surface of the earth, saving it for our grandkids. With this one stockpile, we can power the entire planet, including growth, for about the next 1,000 years. We don't even need to mine uranium. We can do better on these types of things, but we've got to try. And there are lots of things that we need to try. So this is what I call the conjoined triangles of tech. You guys have heard of deep tech, right? That's kind of a way of expressing technology that is not just iPhone apps. But by definition, if you have deep tech on one end, you probably have, I don't know, shallow tech on the other end. You guys know what I'm talking about. These are not tech companies. Don't kid yourselves, right? What did Uber invent? If Mark Zuckerberg had never been born, would we still have Facebook? Or something like it? These might be good products, might be good companies. I'll leave that to you. But these are the logical extension of what you get when you invent internet, wireless data, mobile phones, smartphones, actual technologies, right? And I think it's important to sort this out in your mind, because inventing a new technology is what matters. Bringing it into the world is what matters. That's how you move the needle on solving problems. That's where you get your force multiplier. That's where you get the exponent in your equation that gives you a superpower to actually change the world, right? You don't get it from user acquisition or, I don't know what these guys are running on. See if you can find yourself on this chart. In the blue part or the red part, doesn't really matter. If you're an American, on your worst day, lost your job, girlfriend left you, iPhone battery is dead, you're still in the top 14% globally. That's not so bad. It's like winning lottery after lottery. First lottery, got to be a mammal, which is pretty good. Second lottery, got to be human, which is pretty good for a mammal. The only thing coming after you is mosquitoes, and the reproductive process is fairly enjoyable. Won a third lottery, at least some of us, by getting to be American, which is awesome because, get to go all over the world and blow shit up. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. But a lot of people are living their lives as if they've got to win that next lottery, right? And we're already in the top 14%. How much better could it get? What's your worst case scenario? My startup went out of business, had to sleep on my mom's couch. It's not that bad. It's not existential threats. If you have an iPhone in your pocket, the cost of that thing is equivalent to the global median income. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I've got piles of these things, largely with the screws taken out. You should have an iPhone, and you should drive a Tesla, and you should help us do all these cool new things first that waste a lot of money on cool technology, because it's our job to figure out which of these things work, which of these things are valuable, which of these things solve problems, right? Everybody's got a job to do, and our job is this, like it or not. The world kind of overinvested in us, or at least me. More money's been spent on me, more education's been spent on me, more jet fuel, right? And I think it means we need to do what we're uniquely good for. The world probably doesn't need me sewing in a factory in Asia or mining coal or something, right? I should probably do what I'm uniquely good for, and you should too. Here's a interesting problem. This is a malaria diagnostic. We do a bunch of stuff with trying to solve malaria because it's the low-hanging fruit in global health. And we do these projects with Bill Gates. So he hangs out at the lab, we invent this stuff with him, and then he funds these projects. So we're kind of cheating by spending Bill's money. But We're hoping to solve some real problems. Malaria diagnostic is hard. You're looking at a slide in a microscope like that. Those are blood cells. They're like 7 microns across. And you're looking for features on them, trying to figure out, is that a parasite in a blood cell or some other crap in your blood? It's hard to do. Most countries are lucky to have one person who's good at it. So we invented this thing. It's an automated microscope. You take a sample of blood, it goes in that machine, takes about a half a gigapixel of images, and then, you guessed it, using machine vision, we analyze those images. The job is like finding a marble in a football field, and you get about 20 minutes. This thing now outperforms the best humans on Earth, right? And we can make a lot more of those. And it turns out the work we did, we started this project a decade ago. And everyone thought it sounded crazy when we started it. Now when I tell people about it, like, oh yeah, machine vision, cool. Yeah, I mean, everybody assumes it'll work. It's interesting progression because they've seen it. They find their face in a picture, you know. They believe machine vision works now. This thing, we figured out a lot of the work we did for is pretty generalizable, so we've been going after other diagnostics too. The team recently went after cervical cancer. The best humans doing the best cervical cancer diagnostic on Earth, about 50% accurate. It's like wrong most of the time. That's not what you want. You would like it to be accurate. This thing's over 95% accurate already. It's kind of easy because we have this powerful new toolkit, right? In Silicon Valley, we have this kind of religion called scratch and itch. And scratch and itch means find some problem that you have, solve that. It's kind of like budget market research, right? Because if you have this problem, probably your friends have it too, and therefore there's a market. But I think we're kind of running out of problems in Silicon Valley. Like, our problems are like, you know, got to have weed delivered to my dorm room. iPhone battery doesn't last all day. And like relationship problems, you know. We don't have like existential problems. No malaria coming for me. Like, it's actually pretty sweet. So I think it's okay, you know, go ship an iPhone app, get some users, learn to support some customers. That's all cool. But then understand that that's just practice, right? It's just practice, because the stuff that matters is a problem that you don't have, a problem that 1 billion people have. And it's harder to go internalize those problems and work on them. Here's an example. This woman is packing $25,000 worth of vaccines into a crappy $2 styrofoam cooler. And she's going to truck them out into the bush in rural Africa, start injecting kids. Almost half of those vaccinations are going to fail. 250,000 kids a year die of something they were vaccinated against. And just because the vaccines didn't stay cold. Now, you and I don't have this problem because we have refrigerators and power for the refrigerators. The power's out 4 to 16 hours a day in a lot of these places, right? So we invented this thing. It's a kind of super thermos. You stick vaccines in there, stick it in the sunshine, in the Sahara. There's no external power. You can't plug it in. You come back a couple months later, and your vaccines will still be cold. This is literally the deployment scenario. Thanks. It's, you know, it wasn't that hard. Not to disparage the team at the lab that's working on this thing, but we just had to go there. We had to sit with those doctors in the clinic, which is a fancy term for like a tree with a doctor under it, and this thing. That's the front lines of vaccination. We had to go there, understand the problem, but when we bring it back to our lab, full of PhDs in physics and biology and chemistry. It's actually kind of easy for us to invent those things. The hard part is go get a good problem. That styrofoam cooler, state-of-the-art cooler being used right now is good for 4 hours. We can do better on all these things, but we've got to try. So, for the entire history of humans, we've had this incredible innovation methodology called biological evolution. And that's how you got all these cool features, like opposable thumbs and 2 eyes and the ability to appreciate music. But then something important happened. We got to the top of the food chain and we killed off the very mechanism that got us here. It used to be just through generations of sex and gamma rays, you got variations and mutations, and then through survival of the fittest, you kill off the ones that don't perform as well, which worked really well, but now everybody gets to live regardless of their fitness. Now we have to innovate or die. We have to use our brains. And we don't know if this is going to work. It's an unproven methodology. We have to make better decisions using our brains. That might not work, but we might as well give it a shot. At some point, you got to ask yourself, do we need all these extra humans? Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tell you which ones are extra. Hopefully you don't want that job either. Whoever does, we should probably lynch them first. Okay. But honestly, it's the most beautiful and amazing thing humans have ever done, I think. We chose to let everybody live, regardless of their fitness, which is awesome. But it doesn't come without a cost, right? We chose to let everybody live. We're helping them stay alive. But how do we make their lives good? Up until about 100 years ago, everybody just had to work all the time to keep us from dying. But at some point, because of the Industrial Revolution largely, we got efficient enough that we started to get some free time. Now, we were very industrious. We didn't squander it. We actually put it to good use. And we invented the entertainment industry. Books, movies, music, elections, video games, all the things that we do to fill our free time. It's pretty awesome. But at some point, I think we hit peak entertainment. Right? At some point, we probably don't need you to watch more Netflix. And an important thing is about to happen. We're about to send a robot to do a bunch of your jobs and give you a bunch more free time. So what are you going to do with it? This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is a way of thinking about what humans need to thrive. So look at the bottom of this pyramid. And think about which of these things is technology helping with? Breathing, food. We have all kinds of technology for feeding people. Warmth, heaters are technology at some point. Sex, we have condoms and vibrators. Sleep, keep going. Employment, health, we have all kinds of technology for health. The bottom half of this pyramid are what I call quantity of life issues. We can keep more people alive. We can make them healthier. We can make you live longer. There's like 3,000 different things you die of. Every one of them is a technical problem, and we're going to solve them all. It's amazing. But keep going. Friendship, family, there's no app for that. Sexual intimacy. If you're using technology for that, you're probably doing it wrong. Self-esteem, confidence, achievement. These are not technology problems that we're solving. The top half of this pyramid, I call it quality of life issues. And I'm here from the front lines of inventing new technology to tell you we don't know what the hell to do about that stuff. In Silicon Valley, I think we're often a little disingenuous about this. We act like we're going to solve every problem in the world, but we're not. We don't know what to do about meaning, creativity, problem solving. I'm not saying technology will never help with these things, but we're a long way from it. Solving for how you take these humans, we've kept them alive. Now, how do we make them thrive? How do we make them happy? You look around. People are still hurting, right? People are sad and depressed. They're not any happier, even though they got an iPhone XS, which is awesome. Look at these kids. These are the happiest people I know. They're orphans who never heard of overcrowding in their classroom in Ethiopia. Look at this guy. You know anybody happier than him? I don't. He's doomed on the bottom half of the pyramid. But when he wakes up in the morning, he's got a sense of community. Don't pity these kids. They've got something we don't have. He knows exactly how he fits in, right? In the West, rich as we may be, we're not really doing better on the happiness scale. You get a little happier when you have enough money that you can afford to not worry about dying of malaria. But other than that, we got a lot to learn from them. Robots can only do what we teach them how to do. And right now, we are terrible role models for robots. This is my daughter. She's actually here today. She came from that orphanage in Ethiopia, and I immediately started raising her with a bunch of American problems. Like, we have this robot in our kitchen called Alexa. You guys know Alexa? And I noticed, the way she talks to Alexa, she's kind of bossy. Alexa, tell me a joke. I said, there's going to be a lot more robots. They're probably going to need some friends. Maybe you should be a little nicer to Alexa. And she actually liked this idea, so she would be a little more polite and say, Alexa, please tell me a joke, which totally confused Alexa. Apparently, Alexa hadn't been trained on respectful training data. And so, look, I never got that manual. You guys probably didn't either. And what I think it means is we're getting all these amazing capabilities from our computers mostly right now. And they are getting capable of doing things that they couldn't do before. My entire life, a calculator has been better at math than me. Pisses me off, but it's always true. And now, my computer is better at almost everything than me. It's impressive. But what I'm trying to show you is that when a robot comes and takes your job, I hope that you will rejoice. The truth is, I'll be honest, in this audience, you guys are probably all doomed to work out the rest of your careers. I'm sorry to say, no robot is coming to take your job. We actually need you. But you probably got some friends somewhere who are going to, be displaced by robots. So let's just pretend for a minute. Okay. We have a lot of really important work left to do that only humans can do, right? My daughter's been in public school, a really good one, her whole life. Every year, one teacher, 30 students. She's not the problem kid, so sometimes she comes home bored. It's heartbreaking, right? I would trade any of her teachers, all of whom have been good, for a displaced truck driver and a 1-to-1 student-teacher ratio. You don't need a very good teacher if you only have one student, right? These are not technology problems. These are human values problems. It's up to us to choose what to do with these capabilities, with these tools, right? We've been choosing to pay humans to drive trucks instead of teach kids. How do you blame technology for that, right? Incidentally, I don't know any high school kids who are fantasizing about becoming a truck driver. If you know any, you should tell them, get on it, because there's like 50,000 open truck driver jobs in America right now. We need to hire more, and there aren't any. Don't become a lawyer. We don't need them. Become a truck driver. It's a false dichotomy thinking, this is beyond the fact that like there are no self-driving trucks. The law doesn't let trucks drive without a human in the seat. It's going to take years to change that. Plus, we have to build thousands of self-driving trucks. Like, it's not even a joke. Okay. But the point being, you know, every tool is there for humans to exact our values into the world. A hammer is a tool. I can smash your head. I can build you a home. Artificial intelligence is no different. It's just a tool for humans to choose what to do. What do we actually care about? And how do we use that to exact our values into the world, to build the future that we want? By every objective measure, the world is better today than it's ever been. Right? We have these romantic ideas that, you know, medieval Europe was exciting and, you know, got to fight with swords and it was fun. Yeah, no. It's better now, I promise you. And there's no reason to believe that the world can't be better in a decade, in 100 years, right? And we're the very few people who get the luxury of worrying about the generations yet to come. If you wake up in the morning and you're worried about dying of malaria, you don't get the luxury of worrying about generations yet to come. You got to worry about staying alive right now. We get that luxury. So I'm hoping to convince you that we've endowed you with these tools. And it's your job to figure out what's the right thing to do with the tools. I'm easy to find. Feel free to reach out to me. I read all the email and I almost never reply because I run out of time. But we have a few minutes for questions. I'm super thrilled about this event and getting to be here. It's way better than I even imagined. I don't know how this is possible. You know, I'm from the tech industry. We get a lot of flack for getting together in conferences like this and having an entire audience of white guys who look not quite as good as me, but a lot like me. And what is going on here? I've got the United Colors of Benetton in the house, and it's amazing. How did this happen? Holy shit, you guys. I hope this is the future of the tech industry. Just take over. It's fine with me. Tell everybody I said to do it. Any questions? I promise I'm nicer than I seem, and I won't bite your head off. Oh, so just, I get to kick this.
Yeah, just throw it at whoever you want.
Not on the football team. Anybody have any questions? We can pass that mic. You got a question?
Hi, Pablo.
Hey.
Thank you for this great talk, very inspirational. How do you see ourselves as data scientists assist in your cause?
Yeah, well, excuse me. It's not just my cause. It's everybody's cause, sure. And I get the luxury of getting to work on some pretty cool stuff. I don't think that we've been pitching data science, even though, like, you know, you can just go to LinkedIn, change your title to data scientist, and recruiters will, like, bash down your door. That's pretty awesome, but for all the wrong reasons, right? The truth is, it's even cooler than that, right? It's even cooler because in every context, when we're trying to figure out what to do in the future, we don't know. We just don't know, right? And the only way to know is to either get some genius to tell you, which almost never works. Well, they'll always tell you. They'll almost always be wrong. The way to know is to test, to run a bunch of experiments. You run a bunch of experiments to find what's going to work, right? Historically, we only got to run one experiment at a time in the real world. But now, we have the computational resources to run these experiments in software, and that's what I'm trying to show you with the epidemiological model and things like that, right? If you can run your experiments in software and run thousands of variations and run all possible futures, then every day you can figure out which of those tracks am I on, and what are my possible choices from here. And we can make better decisions. Historically, humans made most of our decisions with gut instinct. We're evolved to do that. We're evolved to see, oh shit, what's that, a rock or a bear? I don't know, I'm just gonna run. Right, and you feel it lots of the time. Oh, I got scared there for a second. What the hell is that about? You have instincts you don't even understand anymore because they're irrelevant. But making decisions with our brains means making decisions with data. That's not comfortable for humans. We're not evolved to do that. And we're at this precipice in human history where we're going to get better answers from the data. We're going to get better answers from those models. And we're going to have to suck it up and trust them, right? Well, you guys are the ones who have to make this work. And if you do a poor job, then people are going to lose faith in those models and lose faith in making decisions based on data. And they're going to go back to gut instincts. Probably going to, beat their GPUs into swords and come after you. I don't know. So I think it's really important, right? And like I said earlier, the spreadsheet that you and I exist in is like the one I showed, males 18 to 25 summarized. The spreadsheet of the future is 7 billion rows, one for every human on Earth. A column for every cigarette you ever smoked, every cheeseburger you ever ate, every time you didn't take the pills your doctor told you to. Mostly inappropriate stuff comes to mind, but you guys get the idea. This is the future of every single business, of every industry, of every city, of everything that we do. And it's a lot of work for a human to figure out how to take that data and build a model that gives us good answers without fooling ourselves, right? It's easy to fool yourself. And that's the job, is to get good at not fooling yourself using data. Yeah. Hopefully that's useful. Anybody else want that mic?
All right, next question.
Over here. Here it comes. Oh, you guys play football?
Hi, Pablos.
Hey.
Yeah, thanks for the amazing talk. I just wanted to ask you this question. Do you have any ideas to tackle the problem of plastic waste? Because that's becoming a huge issue, right, in the world we live in?
Yeah, I haven't worked on that one directly. I think it's one where there's no silver bullet. It's probably not a technology problem, and as much as I hate it, it's probably more of a policy problem, right? This is humans doing the wrong thing. I prefer technology problems because we can solve them better than ones that require humans to make good decisions. That's unfortunate. The truth about plastic, unfortunately, is not a lot we can do in America other than try to not buy as much. As far as I can tell, most of the plastic doesn't go into the ocean on this end. I'll be honest, here's what happens. You drink a bottle of water, goes in the recycle bin, all that stuff, this is what's been going on, gets shipped to China, they sort through it all, figure out, okay, we can use that, we can't use that, the stuff we can use gets recycled in some process, the stuff we can't use, which is most of it, goes in the river, which goes in the ocean, right? the good news is China has just put us on notice that they don't want our recyclables anymore. They got enough of their own. So this is bad for America's recycle and trash industry, but probably good for the planet because they're not buying recyclables from us anymore. So you can put stuff in the recycler, but it's not going to go anywhere anyway. So I'm sorry to say it's bad news for recycling all around, with the exception of aluminum, sometimes glass, and clean cardboard. We haven't really figured out how to recycle things in any way that makes sense. We should keep trying, and these are, I think, technology problems to go after. But the fundamental fact of it is it basically maps to energy. So if you want to solve recycling, and you want to solve clean water, and you want to solve a whole bunch of other problems, you basically need to solve energy first. That's why we work on nuclear fission, right?
Right, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Let's make a data science related question.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, like you've pointed out, a lot of the problems are policy constraint as opposed to technological ones.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, as data scientists, but outside of, well, short of amassing a track record of machine learning could do this and this and this, is there something else that we as a community, as a profession, should be doing to make a dent in the policy aspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly where the world we want to end up in is one where important decisions are being made with a clear map to the decision-making process that runs a line straight through the data, right? Like, I mean, if you think about where we should be going with this, and I think it's not just, not just data science. There's a huge amount of it that is in, like data visualization. How do you present this stuff in a way that humans can get comfortable with, and make them believe in it? But like I think about like the future of healthcare, right? I don't know what's going on when I go to visit a doctor. It's like he Googles some shit and tells me what to do. I'm like, okay. What should happen is, I go in, I get a diagnosis, and then I get a Google map. And the Google map shows, here's where you are, messed up. Here's where you want to be, all better. And you see this blue line saying, okay, you go here, you take these drugs, you do some physical therapy, and then what happens is, we test along the way. Oh, I took those drugs, didn't respond to them too well, take these different drugs, did physical therapy, that went pretty well, do more of it, right? And you see the path based on data of the thousands of people who had the same problem as you, who came before you, how you got from here to there, right? Why don't we do that? Right? That's health. We should be able to do that in everything. And so when healthcare is an example of a super screwed up industry that's like got data and file cabinets and doctors' offices all over the place. But if you imagine them in that way, start with a clear vision of not just like, hey, we should do this. Start with a clear vision of here's the world we want, here's how we want to get there, here's how we've substantiated all these choices along the way, here's the model that shows you what happens if we make these other choices every time, right? This is how we're doing businesses now, and they're working so well that they're taking over the world, right? So when you're looking at the businesses that run their business on computational models, that collect a lot of data about their customers and their market and things, they're winning, right? We have all of our, Amazons and Netflixes and Alibabas and stuff. So you use that as the big hammer to beat people over the head and say, hey, we want to run our civic decision making the way these winners in the commercial environment have done. And I think that's probably about as good as you can do for pitching it. But I don't know. You're talking about how to solve problems with humans, and that's out of my jurisdiction. I only work on things you can reboot. So, okay,
right.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Give it up to Pablo
I'm going to
Solomon.
stick around, so come see me. Thank you.
All right. So, hope you enjoyed. This is a wrap of day one. We've got the Data Bash happening at 7 o'clock, so it's 6:30 now. It's going to be happening here, so if you could please leave the room quite quickly so we can get all these chairs out and prepare for the reception. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed day one, and see you later.